right, guys. Mike Gonsalves here from the Wellness Bucket. Big time excited to have Chelsea Dinsmore join us today on today's call. And I'm actually going to read. I actually have notes here below me because there's just too much good stuff to mess up on. So Chelsea is the owner and Chief Inspiration Officer. Love that title, by the way. Of Live Your Legend, a community whose mission is to change the world by helping people find their passion and build a career around the work that only they are capable of doing. That is cool. Live Your Legend hosts monthly in-person meetups, which I have been to myself, in over 250 cities in nearly 70 countries. Incredible. Focused on creating in-person connections with like-minded living legends. Now, Chelsea, I admire you and your work, but I think this is really why I'm connected to you here. You are a lover. You are a lover of food, adventure, the ocean, and wine country. I mean, that's cool. I don't know. And when you're not helping others live their legend, you're whipping up healthy vegetarian recipes, chasing sunsets, and exploring the world. I mean, that is awesome. You are awesome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. The pleasure is all mine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Chelsea, I wanted to, what I want to dive into today is the whole idea, the whole concept of healthy mind, healthy body, healthy business. And, you know, when it comes to entrepreneurship and, you know, whether you're an entrepreneur just getting going or you've been at it for a while or, you know, whether you're a living legend chasing your passion, there's something to be said about cultivating a healthy mindset, healthy body that essentially leads to a healthy business. And with you, I'm super excited to have you on for, you know, like a lot of reasons. The biggie with you that I wanted to dive in with is from a healthy mindset perspective. I think you're, I don't know, man, in my opinion, one of the best at it. And just what you've been able to do. And I'll let you elaborate more, but let's just say a little over a year ago, you were put in a very unique situation. And again, I'll let you elaborate where talk about requiring a healthy mind, a healthy mindset to take this community, Live Your Legend, which again is in 250 cities, 70 countries, and do what you have done to make the business continue to thrive, in my opinion, more than ever before, given what you were dealing with. So let me just quiet and just let you elaborate if you will.
Yes, of course. So Live Your Legend was actually founded by my late husband, Scott, who unfortunately was killed in an accident while we were mountain climbing just 14 months ago. And so that's sort of what Mike is referring to, because I kind of obviously had a very big shift in my life that there was no kind of leading up to. And in that, so last September is when that happened. And I, at the time, was, you know, not only overcoming tremendous personal challenges, but I also made the decision to take over Live Your Legend to keep his mission and vision alive. And, you know, what I find so interesting about it is this idea of personal development. And a lot of it talks about what we do with our, you know, mind, body, spirit, like all of it together. And what I think is so fascinating is a lot of people kind of go down this personal development path and whatnot. But I got faced with the challenge of, you know, what are these principles if you can't actually apply them when you really need them? And so it was an interesting, you know, an interesting journey. And I mean, I can get as deep or as not into this as much as you would like, but I think it does take really recognizing that your mind, it can be trained the way that a muscle can. And all we're used to doing is replacing like one habit with another, if that makes sense. And sometimes we can't see what that future habit's going to be or how we're going to just replace something we're used to with something new. But it really like it's very complex on the outside, but it can be distilled down into something very simple because the mind can be trained just the way a muscle can. And the more that you realize that, talk about power, right? That is power right there. Recognizing that you don't have to let your mind can control you. You can control your mind. So that's sort of what I would say about mind shifts.
Sure.
I obviously have a lot more to say about that.
I love that statement though right there is so crucial and critical to like really highlight. You said the mind can be trained the same way a muscle can. And I think it's worthy to repeat that and maybe 100 times over because it is true. It might not be as easy or it might be more challenging maybe, but it's possible. And that's all we need to, right? It's possible. You know it, I know it. It's not easy for myself as well, but it is possible. So that's cool. Like we can cultivate, we can create a healthy mindset. I'm curious. Let me put you on the spot a little bit. If you're like, what? I'll keep it to a business perspective. Let's keep it from a business perspective. What was your mindset? Right? You were put in this position, this business position. Like from a business perspective, what was your mindset going into that? Like, hey, okay, I got this community that I am now solely responsible for. Like, what was your mindset?
Full disclosure,
Yeah, yeah.
there is absolutely no way I can do this. That was my full, like, literally, I mean, I had no actual intention of really taking over Live Your Legend. I mean, I knew that I wanted the mission and the message to continue on, but really, quite honestly, I did not think that I was capable of or had the skills to do it. It was sort of just one thing led to the other, and the community was giving to me. I felt that I wanted, there was so much love and support coming from the community that I decided to write a blog post. And then a blog post that I wrote, people were saying this helped me. And so then it sort of just was this, I didn't make an intentional decision. I mean, at some point I really did because I had to decide team structure and all of that stuff. But it was really, I did not think that I was capable of actually running this business. And there's still days where I feel the same way, but don't we all, right?
Well, it's funny. I'm glad you actually said that because that was going to be my next question which is, like, do you have any, I think you just answered it. Like, I was going to say, hey, do you have any, call them what you will, limiting stories, limiting beliefs, do you have them? And I think you kind of answered that already. And the next question is, do you still, so you've been at this for a while now, and do you still have them? Is that something that goes away? Do you still have them? Are they still there? And if they're there, I'm actually curious, how you handle those. How do you handle those if they're still there?
Yeah. No, they're absolutely still there. I mean, especially in my position, it's a bit of a unique one in the sense that the metaphor that I always give is that a lot of entrepreneurs, they get in their car and it's at zero and they drive it until it's 60 and then 100. And I kind of jumped on to a car that was already going 100 miles an hour. And so in a way, like, I mean, I think that I am still undergoing tremendous learning. And, I look at the way that Scott ran the business and I recognize that I have different strengths to bring to it, but some of the strengths that he had, I don't have. And so there's a lot of it is, am I really capable of doing this? Or, I'm not Scott. Are people going to respond the same way? So there's definitely a lot of those limiting beliefs, but I think that it's really about fine tuning your focus because at the end of the day, I'm never Scott. I'm not going to be Scott. And I actually don't think it would come off at all well if I tried to be, right? But what is Live Your Legend out to do? It's out to help people find more meaningful lives. And Scott had a beautiful way of delivering that. And my way of delivering it is different. And maybe it resonates with some people differently than Scott's message did. But that's really what we're after. I mean, it's so easy to get like caught up in like all of the muck around running a business. But at the end of the day, if you can fine tune your focus on, it's not whether your post got 30 or 300 shares. It's about 30 physical people looked at that and felt the need to share it. So I just have to constantly like zoom back in to really why I'm doing what I'm doing to try to get when I get lost in all the weeds.
Sure.
It's just about bringing it back to the why, because how you do something is going to unfold differently among different people and, different tasks and whatever it may be. But if you're really anchored to your why, however it unfolds is okay. So
I love
that's, I
that.
mean, that's really what I do. And I trust me, those beliefs still come up all the time of just, can I possibly do this? Who am I? All of that stuff. But um, once again, I remind myself, I'm just out to help. And even if I help one person,
Mm.
that's really all I'm here to do.
Well, you're helping a lot more than that, FYI, and I think you know. I think you know that. Uh, you know, Chelsea. I love that. I love everything you said there, and I'm curious. I'm curious because I know this helps me. And from what I understand, I think you actually maybe referred to it. Scott used to go out for a run and come back filled with like a million ideas because it affected his mindset. And I'm very much like that myself because this exercise does affect us. Physiologically. It's just it's plenty of science to show that. Did you take advantage of any of that from like going? I mean, I know you're very active these days, and we'll get into that. But did you take advantage of any of that when all this stuff was going on? And if so, like, what did you take advantage of just to kind of try to help the mindset?
To me, anything, and for everybody it's so different, but anything that allows you to get some perspective, right?
Mm,
Like, it's so easy to get caught up in our heads and the stories that we're telling ourselves. But for me, pretty much anytime I step out in nature,
mm,
there's so much abundance. There's so much out there that you're just like, wow, I'm living in this little world, telling myself all these little stories, but there's this whole big planet Earth out here. So nature was real and still is very, very huge for me. And that's so for me, that it just includes, I run occasionally, but it's more like I go on long, long, long hikes where
yeah.
there's just no distraction. There's nothing, nothing pulling me, nothing, none of that stuff. And you just get perspective because it helps you. I think the more that we can get out of our minds, you know, there's just so much noise up there. So when you can kind of get out of that and recognize that there's all this other stuff going on, then it just really helps. So yeah, nature was huge for me and still is.
Nature, and I like that you said that, Chelsea, because it's like, studies show it, even out of Boston University, where something as small as a 15-minute walk, like a 15-minute walk, and then all of a sudden you add nature to it, how that can add, and it shows like how it actually changes. Like there's actually hormonal change in the brain, changes your serotonin, your dopamine, just different hormones that make you feel better, think differently. So I mean, yeah, it doesn't have, like you said, hey, I don't really care for running. You don't have to run, right? I mean, man, go out in nature, go for a 15-minute walk. That's enough to kind of change mindset, change perspective. Absolutely love that. One more thing I want to compliment you, well, actually not compliment, but thank you for doing is actually acknowledging, like, you know what? Hey, man, I've been at this for like a year. Yeah, and I still kind of have those thoughts. And because sometimes I think it's easy to think that, they've been at it for a while. That doesn't happen to them. Their mindset is set, and they don't have to work on it. So thank you.
Well, what I actually find, and I love it now, like I see discomfort as, in a way, a glorious gift. Like, it doesn't feel great, but to me that is like, when you talk about like getting out of your head, right? Like, I think that is like that deeper level of you saying, all right, you're ready to evolve. That's why this is not comfortable anymore. You're not meant
Like that.
to bear discomfort. I see it as a sign from whatever it is, the universe, whatever you want to call it, to say, you know what? This used to feel comfortable. It no longer feels comfortable because you're ready to evolve. Your mind will never be ready. Never be ready. But there's a part of you at a deeper level that knows that you're ready. And I welcome discomfort. Like, it doesn't mean I always enjoy it. Do I have plenty of, challenging times? Absolutely. But I kind of see it as, all right, there is going to be a lesson in this. I don't know what it is. I'm going to grow somehow, some way.
I love that perspective. It's almost like saying, instead of being pissed about it and be like, God, why, like getting like, anxious about it. Like, no, this is a sign that this is good. Like, this is good coming. It's just perspective, right? At the end of the day, but I just love that perspective though. That is
And the
awesome.
same is true for exercise, right? Like the first repetition is not hard.
Right.
It gets hard when it's going to cause you to grow. So, I mean, I
Love that.
really do see, the mind and the body, and I love to use the physical body as a representation of breaking through the mind as well.
No,
So,
well, there's such a correlation there. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. I'm curious, Chelsea. I asked you about yours. Now, you have a gigantic, your community is like, global. I'm curious. Do you see a common? And again, I want to just dive into mindset a little bit more. Do you see a common limiting story or belief within your community that say, hey man, it's like I just don't feel I don't have the confidence, or just I don't know enough people. Is there like some common stories or beliefs that maybe you've identified as an entrepreneur who's already in business or trying to get going? Is there anything like that you've identified yet? Or no.
absolutely. I mean, so I have personally tried to take on welcoming each new member of the community. I read those emails that come in because I want to know where my community's mind is. I want to know their fears, their challenges. So I've gathered tons of data from that. And, everybody has their own story around it, but I really think that most fear can be distilled down, or most challenges or limiting beliefs, whatever you want to call them, it can really be distilled down into a fear of failure and a fear of uncertainty.
Mm,
Most
mm,
challenges come from those things. And oftentimes the fear of and they feed into each other in the sense that when you don't know what something's going to look like in the future, you're afraid you're not going to be good at it. So really all you're afraid
mm.
of is failing. So, it's very
Awesome.
fascinating because we all wrap these stories in these different packages, but they really kind of distill down to, in the end of the day, all of us just wanting to be enough and know that we're enough. Like it's really fascinating actually to like zoom out and observe it from a larger lens.
That I have nothing else to add, but just to say that's absolutely awesome. That's awesome, and I want to actually, based on that, based on what you just said, fear and uncertainty. You recently just picked up, and not recently, and I want to hear more from you, but like I've seen you, you're getting into surfing more, right? And I want to tie this in because talk about fear and uncertainty. I want to tie this in. You and I were recently at a conference earlier this year up in Portland, and you took the stage, you crushed it. It was incredible. And there was one phrase, excuse me, one phrase that just stood out. I mean, I don't say this to embarrass you, but to the point where someone or a couple of people got it tattooed on themselves. And it's true, right? I know it's true. And the phrase from your talk was, "You are limitless. You are limitless." Such an awesome phrase. I mean, I get goosebumps just saying it. I'm curious, like when you take like exercise or what you're doing now, surfing, like how does that tie in? Does it tie in? How does it tie into like being limitless? What's is there a connection there? What is that if there is?
Absolutely. Like I said a bit ago, like I think that the physical, like with your body, it's so easy to say, "Oh, I can only run 5 miles," but then you run six. So it's a fit. Whereas with your mind, like you were saying, like I don't actually necessarily know it's harder, but it's less measurable to
Mm,
like recognize when you've broken through limitations until you kind of look back and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I used to believe that." And now I'm doing, or not believe that was possible. Now I'm doing it. Like it's a little less tangible, but with your physical body, it's very tangible.
sure.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think that that is so true. When somebody first starts running out, their belief, of where they can go might be like the circle's this big. I can run 5 miles and that would be an accomplishment. However long later, they prove to themselves that they can run 15, 50, whatever. I mean, I know you've done ultras.
Sure.
And, if you would have asked yourself 10 years ago if you could run 50 miles, you would have said, no, that's impossible.
Right.
So this idea of being limitless is that our limits are the limits that we tell ourselves are true. And the more that you can do to break through those limitations, the more you realize that you are capable of nearly anything. I mean, you see these people, and I'm not an extreme athlete by any stretch of the imagination. I also am not have very many extremes in my lifestyle, I would say, but like, like guys like Wim Hof who like climbed Everest in shorts because of breathing. Like, he is proving that limits are something that we create. And the more you can recognize that, the more power that you have. And so this idea, and I also think sometimes life hands you circumstances where you're kind of thrown into proving that you're limitless. And other times we find an inspiration from within, but we are capable. I can't even say it enough. Like, we are capable of so much more than you could ever even envision that you are. And all it takes is you putting yourself out there to do it. And that does require you facing your fears. And it does require you using failure and reframing that as, I'm never failing as long as I'm growing. And the only way I'm going to grow is if I'm out there expanding my horizons. So the failure is an illusion when it comes down to it, But that's really what I love the idea of limits, and they're just self-imposed.
Such an awesome reframe of fear. I absolutely love that. And I, speaking of getting ourselves to a point where we feel like we can do it, like you say, Chelsea, and I believe it too. Like, it's just the only limits are the limits we put on ourselves when it comes to mentally, physically. And I always think back to the Roger Bannister moment, and I have a little beef with that. And let me tell you what I think about, because the Roger Bannister moment. Sure, this guy showed us what's possible. So we know it's possible, but others watching, they might not be like, well, that's possible. I get it, but I don't think it's possible for me. And I think when you do these little things, you don't have to go out and run a sub-4-minute mile. Do these little things, and if you do these little things enough, it actually gets you to the point where you start thinking, you know what? I might be one of the people that can run that stuff. So you don't, just because it's possible for someone else doesn't mean you're going to go out and do that same thing. But if you start small and build your way up, I think there's something to be said there for, building, this doesn't just develop overnight. Like you said, just like any other muscle. If I want a six-pack, I'm not going to get it, in 7 days, maybe 7 weeks, 7 months, like that. But there's something to be said about, hey man, habits, sticking with it over and over and over, and you develop that.
And we talk all the time at Live Your Legend about small steps,
Yes,
because leaps are going to make people not even attempt. Whereas small daily practices, like I have small daily practices that I feel remind me that my mind's not in control. And, people have that in different forms. People have it through exercise, meditation, whatever it may be for you. But your mind is always going to try to tell you it's not ready. It's not time, not now. But the more that you can just kind of, like I said, train that muscle to be like, well, you're not in charge. Thanks, but no thanks.
I just love that. I just love how you if we can keep viewing it that way, that the mind is a muscle, if we can keep viewing it that way, it's just that reframe. Like, hey man, if my mind's a muscle, I can train it the same way I train my biceps, my quads. I just love that. I'm gonna keep using that with myself, my own clients. Your mind is a muscle,
Right.
Speaking of muscles and working out, I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking you, what's, you got lots going on, man. You got a lot going on. I know you're extensively, you really do. Live Your Legend, that's enough to keep your hands busy forever. But I mean, you got a lot of traveling that you do, which is awesome. I'm curious, like, what does exercise look like for you? Like, one, when you're not traveling, like, what do you like to do? Yoga, Pilates, working out, and then what do you do when you travel? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I've kind of been a traveling nomad for the last almost 2 years now, but my life in San Francisco, when I did have a more permanent home here, kind of consists of a couple of things. I really like variety, so I like to mix it up. But I love the outdoors. California is great for that, thankfully. So as I mentioned, I spend a lot of time hiking, just out in nature. Like, I walk most places. I haven't had a car I've lived in San Francisco for 10 years, and the majority of my time in San Francisco, I haven't had a car.
Wow.
So, yeah, I love to walk. Like, for me, I work from a coffee shop when I'm here. I am in San Francisco right now. And it's a 25-minute walk down and it's a 20-minute walk back. And that right there, it's just my part of my day to kind of clear my mind. Like I said, I love being in nature. I get to walk through the trees. And so I do a lot of walking. I also do yoga. My body, if I notice that if I don't do yoga at least once a week, my body starts to feel like it's getting old. So I really, I think the longevity of your muscles is important for the longevity of your life.
Sure.
So I do that. I also do ballet bar classes, which it's a combination of yoga, Pilates, ballet. I taught the modality for about 6 years.
Wow.
And then I'm kind of a kid. So I do this kind of gymnastics style class. We do all body weight exercises, but we'll be on the bar or the rings, or we do handstands. And so
Awesome.
that's actually one of my favorite style of classes. And they have them, in different places that I've been as well. So that would be a normal routine here. It's basically like an hour carved out, about an hour every day. Sure. And then on the weekends, as I mentioned, I'll do something a little bit longer. Like that's usually when I would take yoga, like a 90-minute yoga class. And then maybe on Saturday I would go on a hike. So that would be my fitness routine. But obviously, wellness is so much beyond fitness.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
But when I travel, I mix it up. Same thing. You can walk anywhere. Anywhere you go, you can walk. So when I get to a new city, I'll wander around. I love to surf, as you mentioned. Yeah. I don't surf here in San Francisco, but most of my travels, I try to make sure they're near an ocean. So swimming or surfing or something along those lines. And then I bring myself, everywhere I go on the road, I bring a jump rope and a resistance band.
Awesome.
Yeah, because you can do those types of things anywhere. So I do feel lucky that I taught fitness classes for some period of time, so I can kind of self-teach myself some classes. But a resistance band and a jump rope come with me every single single place I go.
And you can bring it everywhere. I mean, it's like tiny. If it takes barely no space in the suitcase. You know what I want to comment on, Chelsea, is you mentioned like, hey man, I walk everywhere, and I think sometimes that's not valued as much as it should be. And again, I want to go back to like I said, a study that out of Boston, I forgot how long ago, it was 2004, that showed the drastic difference, hormonally in our mind, 15 minutes of walking. And I think sometimes people don't, if I can't do half an hour or an hour, I shouldn't do anything. No, that's wrong. And get this crazy story. Once I actually heard that story from that 15 minutes of walking can actually change your mindset and like your physiology and your psychology. I actually started when I was doing Toastmasters in Boston, and I would purposely park like 15 minutes away to walk to Toastmasters. So I was like, because I got in there, I'm like, I must be fired up now. My body's changed, and I felt like more confident giving the speech. I know it sounds silly, but something as like small as that, like 15 minutes, like you said, Christ, if you can go an hour, whatever it may be, but let's not minimize getting to a new city around San Francisco. You haven't had a car in 10 years, right? You walk everywhere. So that in itself is exercise.
And that was like, for me, even when I did more permanently live here, I loved, even if it was 5 minutes, I would shut my computer, go on a walk, and that was my closure of my workday. When you're an entrepreneur, as you know, you can be doing stuff all the time, always. It's always available. So this is when Scott and I were living here together. We had a routine that at the end of the day, we shut down our computers because we both worked from home, and we would eat at least 5 minutes, Palace of Fine Arts, you've been there. Yeah. And we would just go, and even if it was a 5-minute walk to close the day.
Love that.
To just have that physical representation that workday is now done, and now it's time to cook dinner or whatever it may be. So, and I've also done many cleanses. Like I've done them often throughout, the past 8 or 10 years. And when you're cleansing, working out hard is not necessarily the best idea. So when I do that, like I have seen so much health and vitality come into my body by walking, because that will be my activity while I'm cleansing is, for a week, 14 days, however long the cleanse is, like, you just walk and you realize like you get so much vitality from giving your body a rest too at times. So I'm a huge proponent of just walking. I think it's one of the greatest things you can do for your body.
I could not agree more. I just don't think it should be. I think sometimes it's looked at as in not enough. Not enough. Oh, I should do more. No, it's if you can do more, do more. But it's an awesome tool to utilize from a health and healthy mindset, healthy body perspective. I want to ask you, Chelsea, now because you value wellness, and I love that. How do you feel that has contributed to your personal success with Live Your Legend? How is your cleanses, your surfing, your walking? How would you say, if you could put it into words, if you can, how is that translated into making, well, for lack of better words, just making you and the business more successful?
Well, you can't do anything. Sorry about that light. You can't do anything without a strong foundation. Absolutely nothing. A house will fall down if it does not have a strong foundation.
Love that.
And I think that the energy that you show up to with life is what you bring to the table. So if you can't, and granted, I mean, I love coffee. I have coffee, but if you can't be energetic without a cup of coffee, I think it's time to kind of look at your foundation and say, okay, all of us as beings have a natural energy level, and it's just about stimulating that. I also think that to create, which we're all doing as business owners, you're creating, whether it's a product, whatever it may be, you're creating. And you absolutely cannot create without a strong foundation. Otherwise, you're just building on something that's already broken. And I see that the foundation is the full wellness package. It's your mind, it's your body, it's your spirit. And so you got to feed those things before if you're running a business from a shaky, stable foundation, it's going to show up in your business. So I think that it plays so much. They play the interplay between, your life, your personality, your health, your wellness to your business. I don't think there's a bigger direct correlation, to be honest. The people that get burnt out in business is because they're burnt out in life with their health, with their wellness,
There's actually one of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time, Richard Branson. He said it himself. He's like, "Hey man, this is how I've been able to kind of go the distance when I see a lot of other my colleagues and other folks, other businessmen burning out." And he's like it's because I choose to stay fit. And I'm sure you've heard this story as well, Chelsea. He was on his private island with a bunch of executives, and they're talking about different strategies. And they asked him, right? I think this was Tim Ferriss mentions this in his 4-Hour Body book, where they asked him, "Hey, what's one way we can be more productive? How can we be more productive?" And where, story goes, he just kind of leaned back and thought for a second and just said 2 words. He said, "Work out." I mean, this is right. This is from Richard Branson himself, entrepreneur. This guy's a stud. So there's something to be said there about, like you said, and I love how you put it. It's a foundation, man. It's a foundation. You need that foundation to build upon. So I cannot agree with you more.
I think even more importantly than that, it's not about the 6-pack. We're all built differently. We all have, different that. It's about the energy and the vitality that you bring to what you do. And I think it's equally as important in a business life as it is in your relationships. This is, to me, it's like I love what you talk about with buckets, right? Like if you are not filling up your own bucket, you just don't have the space to fill up others. And at times people say, "Oh, I'm selfish," or whatever, but you're not being selfish, because look at what you're going to bring to everything around you when you take care of yourself.
It's so
true. Obviously I feel very strongly about
I love that. I could not have put that better. I'm actually going to listen to this video back, and I'm going to just write that. That was awesome, and it's so true, because if you're not filling your bucket, just to go off that, if you're not filling your bucket, my own bucket, healthy mind, healthy body, however I do that, everyone's different. If you're not filling it, you can't fill others. And if I'm trying to make a difference in my business to help others, I can't help fill other people's buckets if mine isn't filled. So, foundation, full bucket, call it what you will. I just think that foundation, healthy mind, healthy body, is a must for a healthy business. And obviously, we're on the same page. You know what I'm curious about, Chelsea, is you're a very motivated individual. I've met you in person, and I just love that. It's infectious. I'm curious, like, and if you're willing to share here, what motivates you? What motivates you?
Well, like in the moment, music is huge.
Mm.
I love that. Like like a jam comes on, my body is moving. There's just no like I love to dance. I love like that's the one of the like I was talking about having a practice, a routine in the morning that's like people expect to wake up feeling good. It's like, no, make yourself feel good when you wake up. Like so I like do
Yes,
crazy
yes,
stuff. I listen to music. I do all this crazy
yes.
stuff. So that, but you know what I find is so interesting, getting back to these limiting beliefs or beliefs that we used to have that over time shift and change is I've always been into health and wellness in different ways in my life, but I can think back to the days where working out kind of felt like a chore. It was like, okay, I should work out.
Hmm.
But, you know, my motives back then were so different. I think it was that I wanted to look okay in a
Sure.
bikini or whatever it may be. Like, so that's not a very strong motive. I think that my motive is just I want to show up as the best version of me. And because I think that when I do that, I can grow more, I can give more, I can do more, I can be more. And so that is my motive is that I want to show up as me because, you know, especially as you said, my title, Chief Inspiration Officer, like I don't think I can inspire unless I'm inspired.
Sure.
And I'm not going to be inspired if I feel like a piece of crap,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So
Right.
it's just, I think my motive goes, yes, it's about taking care of me, but it's also so that I can do it because of and for the people that are around me. Not even in business, just I want to be the person that shows up to my friend's house for dinner with a smile on my face instead
Sure.
of draining and sucking the energy from that room. Like it's just I very much associate myself with just wanting to like show up.
I love. If you if we're gonna, it's just show up, be more, do more, experience more, create. Just show up, do more, be the best. I love. I mean, if that doesn't motivate anyone, I mean, it motivates me, it motivates you. But I mean, just to be able to do more, again, experience more. And when you talk about from an entrepreneurial perspective, if you're creating something, it's safe to say you're out to do something, to do more, be more, become more, help more, serve more, whatever it may
I sure
be.
hope so.
Right. That's the hope. Right. I don't want to assume here, but that's exactly right, man. But I like hearing that. That's your. I like just it's always interesting to hear what people's what motivates them. Everyone has their own thing, but it's cool to hear yours. So I appreciate you sharing that. Let
And
me
you also
yeah.
just know, getting back to that kind of how the mind and body play into each other is that, you know, when I've gone through maybe periods where, you know, I haven't been so healthy for whatever reason, the mind really starts to kick in then because you're beating yourself up. You're
Totally.
saying, oh my God, I can't believe I let this you know, all this stuff. So knowing that that's a trigger for that mental chatter to start, I don't want that mental chatter to start. The mental chatter doesn't go into that, oh, I beat myself up mode so much when I feel good, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and again, we could sit here and talk philosophy, but science shows that. Science shows, you motion affects emotion, right? Like change your body, change your physiology, move around, you change your psychology. Like it's not like a theory. It's like it's true. So if you're like, oh,
Totally.
I'm sick of like being, not confident, I think I can't do it. Guess what? Get up, go for a walk in nature, come back and try it again. I guarantee you there'll be a shift. It might not be like a miracle like night and day, but there'll be a shift
Yeah.
in how and what you can do and what you're thinking. So there's no question. There's definitely that correlation there. I want to ask you. So you mentioned, hey man, earlier you said, hey, so I can tell when I'm off of yoga, I'm off my game, and we all get there. I get there. You get there. We just kind of get off track for whatever reason, travel, business. What do you do? What do you do to kind of get you, or yeah, what do you do to kind of get you back on track? What's the quickest way to kind of get you back on, like, oh, I've been in a little rut for a couple of days. What do you do to get back on track? Do you do just something fun, something quick? Do you call a buddy? Like, what do you do to get you back on track? Healthy mind, healthy body.
I know this is going to sound the craziest answer, but it can happen in an instant by simply breathing. Like, if you feel like crap, breathe properly and you'll start to feel good again. Like, I know that sounds crazy. And I mean, I taught yoga for some time, so I'm a big proponent of that. But a lot of times, so much of what we're doing is because we're just simply not breathing right. And so I also think that when you start to get in that place, you're kind of like, like, oh God, I got to do something. I got to do all this stuff. And that's just not the place to come from, right? Like, you want to come from a more grounded, centered place. And so I just think that is one thing. And also, one of the things that I've really realized is to just let go. Like, that is honestly one of the best wellness tips I've had. Like, when you're on the road, like I have been, for no joke, almost 2 years, 8 months straight of traveling last year. This year, we're 11 months in. I've probably been out of the country at least 6 of those months. So you just start to realize that, like, we have all these rules. If I don't do yoga, once a week, or if I don't do whatever, if I don't take this class, if I eat a cookie more than twice, whatever. It's like, we have all these freaking rules. And these rules just make us go crazy. So in a way, a lot of it has just been me letting go. Like, because all you can do is what you're doing in this moment. And like, in this, no matter, even when I felt bad or, like I'm not my healthiest or whatever, like, what I do have, like, my body, my mind, all of it is just, it's so much more than I'm giving credit for in those moments where you start to kind of self-sabotage. So taking a big, deep breath is really important. But then I also think, from just an overall perspective, yes, like, it's all about your lifestyle. It's not about rigid rules, because rigid rules no one follows. That's just crazy.
I'm not a rule guy myself. I'm not a rule guy myself, even though, there's plenty of rules in the health and wellness world. Me and rules don't get along.
I can see that in you.
But I like that. It's so simple, Chelsea. It's like, let go and breathe. Like, simple, like, oh my God, I didn't do X, Y, Z. Let go, stop, and just breathe, and just go back. Like, I love the simplicity of it, because sometimes we can make it more, I know I do this, can make it more complicated than it has to be. And 3 words, let go and breathe, right?
And there's nothing you can do about, the 5 cookies you ate last week on vacation. And, there's nothing, like, so let's just take control of what we can do right now. And that is, in this moment, I can breathe and I can say, all right, maybe that didn't make me feel so good, so I'm going to set out, to not do that moving forward.
Absolutely.
Like, that's really all you can do. Like, don't get so caught up in what already happened, right?
Absolutely. I like what you said. Where's your focus? If you're focus on the 5 cookies you ate, you're going to eat 5 more cookies. Right? Focus on, hey, I got to be over here. You'll probably go that way. So I could not agree with you more. I want to ask Chelsea, because we're closing out this year, and then we're coming up to a new year. So curious if you had one, or maybe a couple or several, what was like your number one health goal like this year, and what do you think? Do you have one already for like next year? Like, it could be anything. Well, I'm just curious, from this year and then next year.
So this year for me was surfing. I've dabbled in surfing for years, probably was on my first surfboard at least 15, 20 years ago, but then kind of dabbled for about 5. And so I made a very valiant effort this year to get in the water. And, it was a great way to kind of be a guide for my travels. I did a lot of like surf-based vacations. And still definitely want to continue that next year. But I also think it's interesting as I look at this year and going into next year, because there was, as we mentioned in the beginning, there was a lot going on this year. Not only have I traveled for 6 months, I also took over a business. I also have been personally processing one of the most, devastating things that someone can go through. So I actually think my nature is very much to be. Before I was the chief inspiration officer at Live Your Legend, Scott always called me the chief balance officer. And it's because he was very, very good at doing, and I was really good at being. And I've become a bit of a doer in this last year, just I think to get me from last September to this September. So actually one of my goals is to kind of, and I have some, it's not an arbitrary, just, oh, I want to be, there's definitely some implementation tactics that I have in mind, but it's really to kind of like scale back a little bit and give myself a little bit more space to not do so much. And so that's not directly related to, any exercise regimen or anything like that. But I think that health, as we said, is a holistic thing. And for me, scaling back a little bit to be able to just be is what I need. So and like I said, that requires creating some structure, some boundaries, and moving a little bit less. And yeah, so just things around that, but definitely just scaling back a touch.
I just like just so you even made me think, because you and I had this conversation earlier in the year when we were at a retreat together. But you had a conversation with me then, and then we're having this conversation now, and you just made me think that you're so right. Sometimes it's just to be, because like you said, it's not like you're not just going to be, right. So set your goals for your healthy mind. Hey, what do I need to do to create a healthy mind? Okay. Set what you need to do to have a healthy body. Okay. And then even healthy business. But then once it's set in place, you can just be, man. Just, okay, I have it set. Let me just now work the plan and just be. I love that. And like I said, you've shared that with me before. I'm glad you shared it again now, because because there's always, even there's nothing wrong with wanting to do more, but it's something to be said about appreciating where you are right now at this moment, what you're working on. Because I'm very guilty. I'll raise my hand. So that's why to hear it from you, and I'm sure anyone else listening can be like, yeah, I do that. I think we're all guilty of it. It's just to be reminded of it. It's nice to be reminded. So you might not say.
Well, and this is where, like, I think just having some semblance of self-awareness is so important, is because I felt great all throughout the year. And it's because I needed, just with all the things that I was doing, ramping up in the business, going through a lot of personal growth, all that stuff. The doing was part of what I needed to be. But I would say around October, after just getting through the first year, was when I woke up and like, I just had this awareness in my body where, wow, something is starting to feel out of alignment. And that is how you avoid ever getting burnout. If I would have just said, oh, this is crazy, and not kind of listened to it, and then it kind of was brewing a little bit. And I'm like, what is out of alignment right now? And that to me was my sign of, okay, if I continue at this pace, I will get burnout. And I don't want that. So it's about making a shift here and now before it gets there, so that I can not get there, if that makes sense.
No, it's
so the self-awareness is huge, huge, huge.
It's preventative. It's like you try to prevent it. It's like it's preventative measures. It's almost like if you ignore it, it's not going to go anywhere. I think Tony Robbins, I think he's the one who said it. If there's a problem, if you can't turn your back from your garden and say there's no weeds, the weeds will take the garden. So you can't just say it's not there. So acknowledge what's going on, deal with it, and then you get better from doing so. So that's the message I'm getting from you, which again, I've heard it before, but it's so good to hear again. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Chelsea, this is like, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. You've given us a ton of time already. This has been awesome. Like for me personally, and for the listeners as well. Crazy value. Thank you so much. Now, if they want to get a hold of you, Live Your Legend, learn more, which I'm a big advocate, because I've benefited tremendously from Live Your Legend. So thank you for that. How can others get involved and learn more about Live Your Legend and that whole movement if they want to?
Absolutely. So you can find the majority of our things online at liveyourlegend.net. We have tons of free tools. We have several courses that dive deeper into the topics. And then we also, as mentioned earlier, we have those in-person communities that get together. So you can definitely, whatever works for you, the virtual platform, the in-person platform, That's the best way to find us. And one note that I want to note on, because we're talked a lot about limiting beliefs, and a lot of people say that, oh, I can't be healthy because I travel or I don't have a normal routine or whatever. And I just want to let people know that that is not an excuse. Because I kind of used to believe that, if I didn't have a normal routine, I couldn't maintain my health. And as I mentioned, I have basically been traveling without a normal home for almost 2 years. And you can take care of yourself when you make it simple enough and when you make your why strong enough. So I just had to end on that.
That there's no better way to end it. I mean, that is all, Chelsea. Seriously, thank you for that. Thank you for this time you've given me, the community. You're such a rock star. Thank you for everything you're doing, and just all the best to you. And thank you so much again for being here. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The pleasure was all mine.